In this video, we're going to talk about something you must know before you start investing in residential real estate. And I'm talking about the class of area, the class of neighborhood you're buying in. This is a mistake I see investors make all the time. Like, it is a big one because they think they're buying in one class of neighborhood when they're actually not. And that spells disaster. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through these slides, but I'm also going to pull up a map of the city where I'm located, and we're just going to look. I'm going to point out, hey, these are the A class areas, B class, C class, D class, and what you should know about them so that you can then talk to your investor-friendly real estate agent, your wholesaler, whoever you're buying properties from, and you can really dig into what you need to know before you buy in that neighborhood, in that area. All right, so let's get going. First, what are real estate classes, right? So what are the class neighborhoods that we're talking about? It's really just kind of what we're looking on. We're looking at quality and value of the area, and it really is a great way to help investors understand property conditions, locations, target residents. Now, when we're talking about an A class area or a B class area, that doesn't mean that every single property in that area is great for you or not great for you, right? So this is more of a general understanding of the areas that you're buying in so that then you can say, okay, generally I want to be in this type of area. Now I get to dig into the actual zip code, the actual street, the neighborhood. I want to definitely look at the streets, but it'll go a long way in helping you kind of block out everything else. I think it might have been either Charlie Munger or Warren Buffett who has said, like, probably the biggest thing to success is knowing what to say no to, and that's what this is about, right? So it's not going to really, like, your property conditions, sometimes this is true, but definitely the location, target residents. And so let's go ahead and look at Class A neighborhoods. We're going to dive right in. Class A, this is going to be high income neighborhoods located in the best of areas. The pros, they attract high income residents, right? This is high income residents. They usually have the best schools in the area, in the city. Unless your area that you're looking at does mostly private schools. What are the cons? The cons are obviously it's going to cost you a lot of money to buy in this area. Lower cash on cash returns, vulnerable to economic downturns, right? So if something happens, people may not want to be spending $3,000, $5,000, $10,000 a month on rent. Limited value add opportunities, just depending. I mean, there's some properties. If you find a rundown property in an A-class neighborhood and you can buy it, then fantastic. You can buy it for the right price, but usually there's a ton of competition for those types of properties, and they've already been identified. Higher turnover of residents. I do believe this is true just because these people, they may be renting for a little bit. Sometimes they're renting to decide where exactly they want to buy, what property they want to buy. And so they want to take their time. They take 12 months. And so you do have higher turnover. And we know that high turnover is probably the way that real estate investors, you just don't make a lot of money if you're constantly turning a property over. And then lower demand. I mean, most people are buying their Class A neighborhoods, Class A areas don't have most of it is home ownership. That's just the way it is. So let's look at an area where I am. I'm in Birmingham, Alabama right now, and there's very clearly some A-class areas here, and probably the top three that everybody thinks about who's looking at investing in this area in Birmingham. They're going to be Homewood. Let me change my color here. Homewood. They're going to be Vestavia. And then they're going to be right around here. It's going to be Mountain Brook. And we don't see it on the map here, but Mountain Brook most definitely. So those are the three: Mountain Brook, Vestavia, Homewood. And then in each of those areas, those would be considered A-class. In each of those areas, there are varying degrees of neighborhoods, right? Multi-million to not a million. So you kind of gotta, so if I was generally wanting to invest in A-class real estate in Birmingham, these are the top three places I would look for. then I could go, and if I knew the area pretty well, if I had somebody who knew the area, then I could say, well, what about Shoal Creek? Right? Shoal Creek is a really, really nice area. Some PGA championships have been played there. What about other areas? What about Indian Springs? There are other A-class areas in Birmingham, but those three, the three that I showed you, are the most prominent. All right, what about Class B neighborhoods? Now, Class B, I would consider this to be upper middle class neighborhoods, white collar resident pool. The pros are stable rental demand, strong price and rental appreciation over time. These properties tend to continue to grow from an appreciation standpoint, both rental and the property appreciation, and then attractive to residents who aren't ready to buy. Now, these are, again, people, they may not be the longest term residents, but if they find an area, they could rent for 2 to 3 years in a certain area if they find one that they really like. And B class is attractive to a lot of people. Can be somewhat expensive. They can be somewhat expensive just depending. I know a lot of real estate investors are looking for cash flow, and unfortunately for Class B neighborhoods in the market that we're in, they're tend to be pretty expensive because there's high demand for these, both from the competition from a retail purchase standpoint and from an investor standpoint. And that's what I mean right here, high competition with home buyers, right? So these are great areas where people are looking to buy houses. So you're competing against retail buyers and then other real estate investors. So let's look at a map, and I'll show you some of these areas here in my city. Okay, so if I were in Birmingham and said, hey, I want to invest in B-class areas, I most definitely would be looking at Hoover. Hoover is a massive city in Birmingham. It has great schools, and it is so diverse from types of properties. You can find brand new builds. You can find older 1970s properties. And so this is a highly sought out, and it really kind of has its tentacles in a lot of different areas all over Birmingham. I also think places like Trustful, you have Pelham, Alabaster are great areas. Even Chelsea would be a great area. If you wanted to go further south, down here is Calera, which is a great Class B area. And so I think those are, you could say there's parts of Moody, Leeds, different places like that, which would be great for investors. So that's what B class looks like. You just, again, inside Pelham and Alabaster, if I'm looking at this right here, inside Pelham and Alabaster, there's all kinds of different properties, newer properties, older properties. You would have your pick. All right, so let's go on. Let's look at Class C neighborhoods. Now, Class C neighborhoods are generally known as the best class neighborhoods, the most popular, I would say this, the most popular class neighborhoods that investors look for. And part of that is because the tenant pool, the resident pool, are working class, blue collar workforce. They tend to, if the property is a good property, they will stick there for a while. They'll stick there. They'll rent for a while. They can be super sticky, is what we would call it. They will stay in a property for a long time. I've had a property that was rented for 10 years in a C-class area. So, I mean, that's really what you want, right? There may be some deferred maintenance after that 10 years, but that 10 years of constant income is a great thing from a real estate standpoint. So we also know we have higher cash flow, strong rental demand. People are always looking to rent. This could be as high as 50 retail owners, 50 renting, more acquisition opportunities. There's going to be more opportunity to buy these properties. Older house stock. I love properties that were built in the late 50s, 60s, and 70s in these areas. They're fantastic. I would avoid in Class C. I would avoid very old houses. I would avoid 100-year-old houses built 1920s and earlier. Avoid those. It's too much work. You don't want to do that. You can also rent to a good number of Section 8. If Section 8 is something you want to pursue, you can rent a lot of Section 8. Residents like to look for those types of properties. So what are the cons? Well, with older houses come higher maintenance costs. So even if you rehab a property really well, you renovate it, you may be good for the first 12 months, but just know that if a resident's going to stay in there for 5 years, there's going to be more wear and tear on that property. You may have to, even the renovation may be more expensive. Maybe you have to upgrade some of the electrical, maybe some of the plumbing. Whatever the case is, there's usually with older homes higher maintenance costs. Also, one thing I would say with Section 8 residents, there's always higher maintenance costs because they live in the home more. Some of them tend not to have full-time jobs, which is why they're on the Section 8 program to kind of get them to that point. But in the meantime, they live in the house, they flip switches more, they flush commodes more, so there's more maintenance that goes in with that, although people love the guaranteed income from the government. So residents can create more wear and tear, mentioned that, increased risk of late fees. Yeah, and what I mean by that is really when a resident has an emergency, some type of issue in their life, could be a personal crisis, could be loss of job, could be illness, could be divorce, whatever the case is, when these big life events happen, negative life events, they tend to be more economically fragile, if I could use that term. So they impact them in greater ways, and they may not be able to pay the rent that month. Also, limited appreciation, for these properties that they may not be taking off. They may not just go, skyrocket through the roof with a B class or an A class area, but they do tend to have good rental appreciation over time. And then ultimately, they could be more difficult to sell. What I mean by that is it's going to be probably more difficult to sell them on the retail market. You could definitely sell them to an investor, but as we all know, investors like deals, and so you may have to come down a little bit on your price. So let's look at what a C-class property looks like. All right, so here I am. I'm in Birmingham, and if I'm looking at C-class areas, I'll tell you some ones that I really like. I love Hueytown. I love Forestdale. I love Fultondale. I love Pinson, Clay. There's another area right in here, Clay Chalkville. Oh my goodness, you could go, I wouldn't go too far out. I probably wouldn't go past Moody right there. I wouldn't go past Fultondale right here. That's just me. I also think there are, goodness, those are probably the main ones. And then if I were to dig in to this western part of town, right here, I would find pockets of great C-class neighborhoods. I owned a couple in an area right next to Fairfield. There's an area called Midfield, and I owned a couple in Midfield that I absolutely loved. One was on Midwood Avenue. I think it was Midwood Avenue. And I had a friend who just passed by that house. I'd sold it a while back, and he said, "Do you remember this house?" I said, "Shoot, yeah, I love that house." I had a Section 8 resident, and over the course of 5 to 6 years, she got off Section 8, and she paid every month, and it was just a great, great house. That was in Midfield, but it was really a small pocket of Midfield where home ownership was still pretty high. When you drove down the street, there was pride of ownership. So even on the rentals. And so those are the types of little pockets. But from a broad standpoint, the ones that I mentioned here are going to be some of the best for solid C-class. Because in Fultondale, Forestdale, Hueytown, these areas, parts of Bessemer, they still have strong home ownership in these areas. All right, let's go into Class D neighborhoods. Wow, distressed or high crime areas is the way I define this. And there's really no getting around it. Of course, the pros are going to be, hey, you might be able to find something pretty cheap, even though you have to be careful. I was looking at a marketplace the other day, marketplace for investors, where they put a bunch of houses out. And one of the houses was in an area that I just don't like. It's not a good area. It's not landlord friendly at all. And they were asking almost $100,000 for this property, and it was in horrible shape, distressed. And I thought, who in the world is going to buy that for $100,000 and spend another $20,000 fixing, 20 to 30,000 fixing? I have 130 in it. It just was boggling my mind. I probably wouldn't pay $30,000 for the property. So you have to find the deals. You have to find the deals. Usually they're not going to be very apparent, right? But there is, if you can find them, there's high potential for cash flow, strong rental demand. These are a vast majority of rental areas. Now, what are the cons? The cons are going to be high risk. Not everybody should be investing in D-class neighborhoods. Somebody reached out to us. They watched a YouTube video. They reached out to us and they said they were looking at a couple of B-class areas. And I thought that was fantastic. Like that, if I'm from California, if I'm from out of state, I'm not buying D-class. Here's the challenge. Let me tell you, this is the challenge. The challenge is sometimes people who are selling these properties want to convince you that the D-class area is really a C-class area. You need to do your own research. You need to figure this out because this could be in any, whether you're buying in St. Louis, Detroit, Columbus, Ohio, Cleveland, Ohio, it doesn't matter. You need to do your research and find out, is that true or not? And one of the ways that you should do this is talk to property managers. Reach out to us. We have boots on the ground. We know these neighborhoods. We rent in these neighborhoods. We in every class we're in, all of our cities, we are renting A to D. But you need to know what you're buying, big time, because it's high risk. This could turn into a disaster for you. Difficult to find reliable resident areas with higher crime. Like you could have a great property, but if it's in a really bad neighborhood, what kind of great resident wants to rent there? And I mean, the great residents that have lived in D class, they really want to get into the C class areas, into better areas if they can. Intensive management, if you're trying to do this in your city or out of state, very, very tough to do. Extensive repairs, usually on the buy when you're buying and you're renovating, but also because they're so much older. We have well over houses built in 1905, 1900 here in my city, and man alive, they're tough to keep up. Limited upside, you're not going to get a lot of appreciation. You're not going to get a ton of rental growth over the 15, 20 years, and there's no retail exit strategy. So what does a D-class area look like in my city? Let's take a look. Well, here I am in this city, and really, this is the western part of town right here. We call this West End. So if somebody's trying to sell you a property in West End, you better watch out. You just need to know. There are pockets that are great. There are pockets where home ownership looks great. Pride of ownership looks fantastic, but it's really on a street-by-street basis. And if you're not an expert, you could be in trouble trying to buy in these areas. So I would look out for that. You have Lipscomb, Bessemer, which is kind of considered part of the western part of town. There's just really, I would say these are obviously there's some stuff in the like right in the heart of Birmingham that I would want to stay away from. There's parts of the eastern side of town that I would want to stay away from. But ultimately, if an investor came to me and said, Spencer, I want you to help me find a D-class area and a property to buy in a D-class area, I would know exactly where to go. And then it would just be a hunt to find the best property on the best street in those areas. And that is more difficult to do. So anyway, but I've got friends listen, I cut my teeth in the West End. This is where I started buying properties, and I have friends that still buy properties over there. They still do really, really well. Know a couple of people that have owned over 100 properties in this area, each more than two, and they did very, very well. But they were experts, and guess what? They lived here. And they were so I would, in my opinion, I'm going to let the pros who live in these areas, I'm going to let the pros buy these houses. And I'm going to stick to C plus and B class areas if I'm buying out of state. All right, that's it. This is the just a quick overview. Obviously, the class of neighborhood is really, really important. They all have unique risk, rewards, target residents. Choose wisely, choose wisely, choose wisely. Make sure you understand what you're buying. I hope this has been helpful. Go ahead, subscribe to our channel, like this video, and then we're going to just keep coming back with investor-friendly videos to help educate people and hopefully help you make better decisions. If we can ever help you, reach out to us. Evernest.co is our website. We'd love to hear from you.